you write about these things so that other people can be encouraged, but not only that, but have like some kind of a maybe a something where they can establish their own plan, or
Mm.
action or practical things, not just
Yeah.
like my story, but you share like practical things for people. And that's what they really need. They want to hear stories, but they also want to see, well, how does this relate to my story and how can I implement these kind of action steps? So I would love if you would share a little bit more about the caregiver book that you wrote and what actually you would want the reader to take away from that book.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I think in everything that I write, I try to give the reader permission to say, this is what I'm feeling. And that was my goal in Blended with Grit and Grace, Loving with Grit and Grace, Sunlight Burning at Midnight, and now this Caregiving with Grit and Grace. We all have these emotions, we all have these feelings. And to be able to say, I am feeling this way, there's something
Mm,
so freeing about that that even opens you up to then be able to explore the tools and the strategies that you can implement. But if you're not willing to even admit that you are having these feelings, you can't move into that place of um, bettering the situation or grieving the situation or whatever that's going to look like. So I think that was, and that's not even intentional. I'm just not a very private
mhm,
person. I often joke, like, I don't even have blinds on my windows. I'm just like, this is my life. I don't really understand the point of being so private about things because I feel like we all go through these things. And the more we would talk about these things, I think it would be healing for other people. And so with the caregiving with grit and grace, it wasn't even necessarily intentional that I was giving
mm,
permission to caregivers to feel these things, but I kept hearing this feedback from caregivers as they read the book. Thank you for giving me permission to feel anger or to feel this
mhm,
grief or to feel resentment because I don't want to do this, for the rest of my life. And so
mhm,
beginning at that place of permission and then I think leading into a place of trying to bring hope and encouragement in a really challenging um, scenario because caregiving is tough. I mean, we are going through these mundane, monotonous tasks that don't really seem to mean a whole lot in the grand scheme of what is important in life. And
mhm,
that was a hard lesson for me to learn too, that caregiving is holy work and it is the holiest work I can do this side of eternity is caring for someone who cannot care for themselves. And so much so that
mm,
that's exactly what Jesus came to earth to do for us is care
mhm,
for us physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And so in our actions of caregiving, we are becoming more Christ-like. And that is ushering in the kingdom of heaven here on earth. And so once I was able to shift that perspective, it was a game changer for how I viewed my caregiving duties. And so I hope that people who read this, who are either caregivers now or know a caregiver or will be in a caregiving role at some point, can also learn to shift their perspective because that is ground zero, I believe,
mm.
and being able to embrace the calling that the Lord puts on your life for a season of time.
Yeah. Wow. That is a beautiful way that you explain that and how a shift in perspective can really change the trajectory of the whole journey and how you were talking about caregiving as being holy work. And I think really for sure that is going to encourage someone listening right now because when you're in the thick of it, sometimes you really can't or don't have the bandwidth to step back and look at the whole big picture of how is God, leading me in this or how can I glorify him and also partner with him in kingdom work
Mhm.
as I care for this person or people who have been fearfully and wonderfully made in his image. And it is a it is a high calling and a holy work. So